In the boundless expanse of the primordial void, before time began and before form took shape, a profound and cosmic drama was set into motion. At the very genesis of existence, there was only chaos, a vast, infinite chasm devoid of shape, structure, or meaning. It was not simply emptiness, but a raw, undifferentiated potential, a swirling sea of formless energy. Yet this state of pure disorder was never meant to remain untouched. From the heart of this limitless void, the first great cosmic entities emerged, the primordial deities. These ancient beings marked the dawn of creation, weaving the earliest threads of reality that would eventually lead to the structured universe and the world as humanity came to understand it. Unlike the familiar Olympian gods who would later dominate Greek mythology with their human-like personalities, passions, and conflicts, the primordial deities were far more abstract and immense. They did not resemble mortals, nor did they dwell atop mountains or intervene in mortal affairs. Instead, they embodied the raw, elemental forces of the cosmos, the very concepts that underpinned existence itself. From this churning void came Gaia, the earth incarnate. But Gaia was far more than just the terrestrial planet. She was the living embodiment of the earth, representing the nurturing and sustaining power of nature. As the primordial mother, Gaia was both fertile and fierce, a cosmic source of life whose very essence would give rise to the heavens, the seas, and a lineage of powerful beings. In contrast to Gaia's fertile embrace, there arose Tartarus, the deep abyss. Tartarus was not merely a place of torment, as later myths would describe, but a primordial force unto itself. It was the lowest point of existence, a vast chasm so dark and impenetrable that even the gods feared it. This abyss would eventually become a prison for the most fearsome beings, but in these early stages, it represented the terrifying depths of potential destruction, the shadow to Gaia's creative light. Another fundamental force emerged alongside them, Eros, the primordial embodiment of desire and attraction. Not to be confused with the later god of romantic love, this primal Eros was an elemental force of binding. It was through Eros that separate entities could come together, that chaos could be shaped, that form could arise from formlessness. Without this divine attraction, nothing could unite or evolve. Eros was not born of any parent, but sprang forth spontaneously, signifying the inherent pull in all things toward connection, creation, and life. As this cosmic drama continued to unfold, more ancient forces began to rise from the void. Nyx, the personification of night, emerged cloaked in shadows. She was a powerful and enigmatic figure, often envisioned as a spectral presence veiled in darkness. Nyx governed the unknown, the dreams, the mysteries that elude human understanding. She was not simply the night sky, but the very concept of night, of obscurity, silence, and the boundary between what is seen and unseen. Closely tied to Nyx was Erebus, the embodiment of darkness itself. While Nyx represented the overarching mystery of night, Erebus was the physical shadow that crept between stars, the deep gloom that filled the spaces between the worlds. Together, Nyx and Erebus formed a potent primordial pair whose union would give birth to other essential elements of existence, including ether, the pure upper air that the gods breathed, and Hemera, the personification of day. These primordial entities, Chaos, Gaia, Tartarus, Eros, Nyx, Erebus, and their offspring, were not rulers of the universe in the sense of kings or queens. They held no thrones, wielded no weapons, and issued no decrees. Instead, they were the very laws and fabric of reality. They formed the essential framework upon which all later myths, gods, and worlds would be constructed. Their emergence from chaos signified the critical turning point from disorder to cosmic order. Chaos, once an endless, featureless expanse, began to give way to distinctions and boundaries. Earth was separated from sky. Light was divided from darkness. The foundations for heaven, sea, and underworld were laid. The primordial deities set into motion the cycles of day and night, life and death, love and separation. This transition from primordial void to structured reality was the first act in the grand mythological cycle of the Greeks. Everything that followed, the rise of the Titans, the wars among the gods, the reign of Zeus and the Olympians, was built upon the foundation laid by these original forces. The primordial deities, in their raw and boundless power, remain eternal reminders of the universe's mysterious origins, a legacy etched not in temples or statues, but in the very structure of existence itself. From the primordial union of Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky, a powerful new generation of divine beings came into existence, beings who would forever transform the structure of the cosmos. These were the Titans, 12 mighty entities whose strength and presence rivaled that of their creators. Their emergence marked a turning point in the mythic timeline as the universe began to evolve from chaotic origins into a more defined and complex order. The Titans were not merely gods in the traditional sense. They were the living embodiments of natural forces, each one personifying a fundamental aspect of the world as it was perceived by the ancient Greeks. Among the most revered of these celestial children was Oceanus, the Titan of the great, encircling river believed by the Greeks to flow around the entire world. This vast, cosmic waterway was considered the origin of all the Earth's freshwater sources, from thunderous rivers to serene lakes. Another of the prominent Titans was Hyperion, often associated with the brilliance of the sun. He was imagined as a radiant figure who drove a flaming chariot across the sky each day, bathing the earth in light and warmth. Through Hyperion, the Greeks understood the daily rhythm of dawn and dusk, light and shadow. The arrival of the Titans marked a significant shift in the cosmos. Where once only formless, abstract entities reigned, Chaos, Gaia, Tartarus, and others now stood a new pantheon with more defined roles and clearer identities. The world began to take shape in ways that mirrored the natural order observable to humans. However, this new dawn of divine beings was not met with joy by all. Their father, Uranus, the embodiment of the sky itself, was overcome with dread. Terrified by the immense power his children possessed, he began to fear that they might one day overthrow him and seize control of the cosmos. Consumed by paranoia and determined to prevent any threat to his dominion, Uranus made a drastic and cruel decision. He would imprison his own offspring. One by one, the Titans were forced back into Gaia's womb, into the depths of the earth itself. This act of cosmic betrayal caused Gaia tremendous pain, both physically and emotionally. As the mother of these powerful beings, she suffered deeply, her body groaning under their pressure. Her anguish manifested in violent tremors, earthquakes, and convulsions that rocked the surface of the world. Unable to bear this torment any longer, Gaia resolved to end her suffering and liberate her children. In secret, she devised a bold and dangerous plan that would alter the very course of divine history. From the unbreakable substance known as adamant, she forged a great sickle, a weapon of immense strength and deadly precision. With this weapon in hand, she turned to her captive children, pleading with them to rise up and overthrow their tyrannical father. One by one, Gaia presented the sickle to her Titan sons, urging them to act. Yet despite their suffering, most of them recoiled in fear or reluctance, unwilling to lift a hand against the god who had given them life. All except one. Cronus, the youngest and most cunning of the Titans, stepped forward. Whether driven by ambition, rage, or a sense of justice, Cronus accepted the sickle. His decision would ignite a chain of events that echoed through the mythology of the Greeks for generations. When the moment came, Uranus descended from the heavens to lay with Gaia. Cronus lay in wait, hidden and poised. Then, with swift and merciless force, he struck, castrating his father in a moment of horrific and transformative violence. As Uranus's blood spilled across the earth, it gave rise to new forms of divine life. From the blood that soaked into the soil, terrifying beings such as the Furies and giants were born. But from the sea foam created by the severed genitals cast into the ocean, a far different entity emerged, Aphrodite, the radiant goddess of love, beauty, and desire. Her birth signaled the beginning of an entirely new era, one that would culminate in the eventual rise of the Olympians. The downfall of Uranus and the ascent of Cronus heralded the beginning of the Titanomachy, a mythological cycle defined by succession through violence and betrayal. Though Cronus now ruled as the king of the Titans, his rise to power was already tainted by the blood of his father. And in time, he too would face the same fate, as prophecy foretold that his own children would one day rise against him. Thus, the rise of the Titans was not only a story of liberation and power, but also a cautionary tale of cycles, where power gained through betrayal inevitably leads to further conflict, and where the gods themselves are never free from the forces of fate. In the aftermath of a brutal and cosmic war that saw the downfall of the Titans, a new divine order began to take shape. The Olympian gods, having secured their victory, now faced a monumental task, establishing the structure of the universe. The dust of conflict had barely settled when the gods stood at a critical crossroads: how to divide the vast realms they had claimed. With the ancient powers overthrown and a new age beginning, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, the three most powerful brothers among the Olympians, set out to determine their respective domains. The method they chose would forever shape the balance of cosmic authority. Rather than wage another war among themselves, they opted for a solemn yet decisive method: drawing lots. This seemingly simple act of chance carried enormous consequences, for it defined the structure of existence itself and maintained a fragile balance of divine power that would ripple across both godly and mortal realms. The draw of fate saw Zeus ascend as the ruler of the sky, the king of all gods. His dominion extended across the boundless heavens, giving him authority over thunder, lightning, storms, and atmospheric phenomena. Wielding the thunderbolt, a weapon of unmatched destructive power, Zeus commanded respect and fear alike. The eagle, a creature of great majesty, became his sacred animal, symbolizing his reign over the sky and his omniscient gaze over the world below. Poseidon, often called the Earth Shaker, drew the lot that granted him dominion over the seas. His realm encompassed not only the oceans and rivers, but the mysterious depths beneath them. His influence wasn't limited to water alone. Poseidon also ruled over earthquakes, shaking the foundations of the land with his mighty trident. With this three-pronged weapon, he could stir oceans into chaos or split mountains in two, embodying both the beauty and fury of nature. The third brother, Hades, was given control over the underworld, becoming the lord of the dead. While often viewed with dread by mortals, his realm was not a place of torment alone. It was a vast, shadowy world filled with complexity and order. Hades ruled over the souls of the departed, ensuring balance in life and death. It's vital to note, however, that Hades did not personify death. That role belonged to Thanatos, the spirit of death itself. Hades' domain was more administrative and spiritual, overseeing the afterlife rather than commanding it. This division of power among the three brothers established a cosmic hierarchy, with Zeus presiding over all from the heights of Mount Olympus. From this celestial throne, he governed divine and mortal affairs alike. Though he was considered the supreme ruler, Zeus's authority was not absolute. He often faced resistance, schemes, and rivalries from his fellow gods. The Olympian hierarchy, much like human societies, was filled with politics, tension, and the constant shifting of power. Beyond the three ruling brothers, other Olympian deities were also granted domains, each one governing a crucial element of the natural or human world. Athena, born fully armored from Zeus's forehead, became the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and just warfare. Her most iconic contribution to mortal civilization was the olive tree, gifted to the city of Athens. This symbol of peace, prosperity and nourishment proved more valuable than Poseidon's rival gift, a saltwater spring, cementing her as the city's patron and showcasing her far-reaching influence. Aphrodite, born from the sea foam created by Uranus's severed form, embodied love, beauty, and desire. Her domain included the powerful emotional and sensual forces that influenced both gods and mortals, shaping relationships and destinies alike. Demeter, sister of Zeus, took on the vital role of goddess of agriculture. She governed the cycles of planting, harvest, and fertility, ensuring the survival of humanity through the rhythms of the earth. Her presence was central to human livelihood, and her myths reflected the deep bond between divine will and nature's bounty. Together, these deities and their domains formed a cosmic framework through which mortals could understand their world. Every natural force and every human experience was represented by a divine power. Prayers and offerings were made to specific gods depending on the need, be it wisdom, protection, fertility, or love, bridging the gap between Earth and Olympus. However, despite the structured distribution of power, divine harmony was far from guaranteed. The gods, though immortal, were not immune to jealousy, rivalry, and pride. These celestial tensions often spilled over into the mortal world, with disastrous consequences. One of the most telling examples is the myth of the golden apple of discord. A petty dispute among goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, over who was the fairest led to the judgment of Paris, the prince of Troy. His choice to favor Aphrodite ultimately set the wheels in motion for the Trojan War, demonstrating how the ambitions and conflicts of the gods could alter the course of human history. In this intricate web of divine relationships, cosmic domains, and mythological drama, the Olympian pantheon became not only a collection of powerful deities, but a reflection of human nature, fate, and the ever-turning wheel of time. As the Olympian gods settled into their celestial dominions following their victory in the Titanomachy, a singular figure emerged from among the divine ranks, one who would challenge the newly established order and forever transform the bond between deities and mortals. This figure was Prometheus, a titan not only known for his intellect, but also for his unwavering compassion for humankind. Though born of the older generation of gods, Prometheus had sided with Zeus during the Great War against the Titans. But his allegiance was not rooted in blind loyalty. Rather, it came from a calculated vision for a better future, particularly for the mortal world. Where others saw humanity as fragile and inconsequential, Prometheus recognized a flicker of untapped potential, a spark waiting to be kindled. Zeus, now enthroned as king of the gods, entrusted Prometheus and his brother Prometheus with a critical task: to create the living creatures that would inhabit the earth. Prometheus, whose name fittingly means afterthought, approached the task with great zeal but little planning. He lavished gifts upon the animals he shaped: strength, speed, wings to soar, fur to shield from the cold, claws for defense. He gave so generously that by the time he turned to humans, there was nothing left to bestow. Mankind was left naked, vulnerable, and unequipped for the harshness of the natural world. Seeing this imbalance, Prometheus took matters into his own hands. From the clay of the earth, he molded human beings, shaping them in an upright form to resemble the gods themselves. This act was not merely one of physical creation, it was symbolic. It placed humanity on a distinct plane, set apart from the animals, bearing the potential for reason, purpose, and greatness. Yet Prometheus knew that form alone was not enough. If humans were to survive and thrive, they needed something far more vital, a spark, both literal and metaphorical. In an audacious act that would enrage the heavens, Prometheus ascended to Olympus, stole fire from the gods, and gifted it to mankind. This was no ordinary flame. In Greek mythology, fire represented the essence of civilization itself: knowledge, technology, the capacity to build, to think, and to dream. By granting fire to humanity, Prometheus gave them not just warmth and light, but the power to forge tools, shape metal, create art, cook food, and build society. This divine flame illuminated the path from savagery to civilization. With fire, humans stepped out of the shadows of ignorance. They began to craft weapons and shelter, write poetry and laws, and found communities that would one day become cities and empires. In that moment, mankind became more than clay. They became creators. But such defiance could not go unpunished. Zeus, the omnipotent ruler of Olympus, was incensed by Prometheus's theft. To challenge the authority of the gods was a bold and dangerous act, and one that demanded retribution. In a fury, Zeus ordered Prometheus to be seized and bound to a desolate cliff high in the Caucasus Mountains. There, in cruel isolation, the Titan was condemned to endure a harrowing fate. Each day, an enormous eagle, sacred to Zeus, would descend to devour his liver. And each night, his immortal body would regenerate, only for the torment to repeat in an unending cycle. This punishment was not just physical, it was meant to break the will of a rebel who dared to uplift mortals against the divine decree. Yet Prometheus did not yield. Despite the agony, he remained steadfast in his decision. He had brought fire to humanity. He had altered their fate. And for that, he did not regret his suffering. The myth of Prometheus is one of the most enduring and profound stories in Greek mythology. It speaks to the eternal struggle between authority and innovation, between submission and defiance. Prometheus stands as a symbol of sacrifice, foresight, and the relentless pursuit of progress. In giving fire to mankind, Prometheus didn't merely offer a tool, he sparked a revolution. A titan punished, a god defied, and a race empowered. In his suffering, he became a beacon for those who dared to seek knowledge, even at great cost. As the Olympian gods began to settle into their newly claimed domains following the cosmic upheaval of the Titanomachy, one figure rose to prominence, one who would not simply accept the established divine order, but would instead reshape the fate of mortals forever. That figure was Prometheus, a titan of foresight and cunning, who had notably sided with Zeus and the Olympians during the Great War against the Titans. Unlike many of his fellow immortals who often regarded mortals with indifference or disdain, Prometheus saw something different in humanity, a spark of potential that others had overlooked. It was this belief that set the stage for a profound conflict, one that would echo through every corner of Greek mythology and define the very relationship between gods and mankind. Recognizing Prometheus's wisdom, Zeus entrusted him and his brother Prometheus, whose name fittingly means afterthought, with the monumental task of creating all living creatures to populate the earth. Epimetheus, full of enthusiasm but lacking prudence, undertook the task with great energy. However, his eagerness led to a critical mistake. In his rush, Epimetheus distributed all the natural gifts, strength, speed, fur, wings, claws, shells, and camouflage to the animals, ensuring their survival in a hostile world. But when it came time to equip mankind, he found himself bereft of resources. Humans were left fragile and exposed, naked in a world teeming with beasts of power and defense. Witnessing this tragic oversight and the vulnerability of mankind, Prometheus could not stand by idly. He resolved to intervene and crafted humans from clay, molding them into a noble, upright form reminiscent of the gods themselves. This act was not just physical creation, it was symbolic. It declared that humanity held a unique and elevated place in the cosmic order, distinct from the rest of nature. Yet, Prometheus knew that physical form alone was not enough. Humanity lacked the means to survive, to think, to grow. They needed something more, a spark, both literal and metaphorical, that would ignite their potential and enable them to rise above their fragile beginnings. In an act of bold defiance and divine rebellion, Prometheus stole fire from the heavens, smuggling it from Mount Olympus and delivering it to mankind. But fire, in Greek mythology, represented more than just heat and light. It was the very essence of enlightenment, of technology, of civilization itself. By gifting fire to humans, Prometheus gave them the tools to shape their own destiny. With fire, humanity emerged from darkness. They forged metal tools, cooked their food, lit their homes, and kindled the flames of knowledge and creativity. They built cities, crafted art, and developed laws. The fire became the foundation of civilization, lifting them from helplessness into an era of self-determination and cultural development. In essence, Prometheus had elevated mortals to near divine potential. But such a gift did not go unnoticed. When Zeus, king of the gods, discovered Prometheus's betrayal, he was enraged by the audacity and defiance shown by the Titan. To challenge the authority of Olympus, to give mortals what was meant only for the divine, this could not go unpunished. Zeus conceived a punishment so severe, it would serve as a warning to all who might dare to defy the gods. Prometheus was seized and chained to a remote, desolate mountain peak, Mount Caucasus, where he was condemned to suffer for eternity. Each day, a giant eagle, the sacred bird of Zeus himself, would descend upon him and tear into his liver. Being immortal, Prometheus's organ would regenerate overnight, only for the torment to be repeated endlessly. This eternal agony was Zeus's price for fire. And yet, Prometheus never wavered. He endured the pain without regret, for his sacrifice had irrevocably altered the human condition. Thanks to him, mortals had become more than passive beings. They became creators, thinkers, rebels. They could now shape their own fate and aspire to heights even the gods might fear. The myth of Prometheus is not just a tale of punishment and rebellion. It is a timeless allegory of human nature. It illustrates the tension between power and progress, the risks of defiance, and the costs of enlightenment. Prometheus stands as a symbol of resistance against tyranny, of the eternal thirst for knowledge, and of the unyielding human spirit in the face of divine oppression. In gifting fire to humanity, Prometheus did more than illuminate the earth. He ignited the dawn of human civilization, a flame that no god, not even Zeus, could ever extinguish. As the dust of the Gigantomachy, the great battle between the Olympian gods and the giants, began to settle, a new chapter unfolded in Greek mythology. From the sacred union of immortal gods and mortal humans emerged a remarkable new class of beings, the demigods. These heroes, born of both divine blood and human resilience, stood between two worlds and became champions of balance, destiny, and legend. With divine strength coursing through their veins and mortal ingenuity guiding their actions, these heroes would undertake legendary quests that tested not only their might, but also their minds, heart, and souls. They were not just warriors, they were bridges between Olympus and Earth. One of the earliest and most iconic demigods was Perseus, son of Zeus and the mortal princess Dana. His journey to slay the monstrous Gorgon Medusa, a creature so hideous her gaze could turn men to stone, epitomized the delicate balance between divine intervention and human courage. Recognizing the danger of his quest, the gods themselves chose to assist him. Hermes provided him with winged sandals, and Athena gifted him a polished shield to use as a mirror, sparing him from Medusa's fatal gaze. Armed with these divine tools, Perseus succeeded where no mortal could, proving that demigods could challenge fate and emerge victorious. Another towering figure of the heroic age was Heracles, better known by his Roman name, Hercules. Also a son of Zeus, Heracles embodied raw strength and heroic tragedy. Driven mad by Hera, Zeus's jealous wife, he tragically killed his own family. To atone for his sins, he was sentenced to complete 12 labors, a series of nearly impossible tasks that tested the limits of endurance, intellect, and determination. From defeating the ferocious Nemean lion, whose hide was impenetrable, to capturing the elusive golden hind of Artemis, Heracles' feats became immortalized as symbols of human redemption through suffering and resolve. Yet heroism in Greek mythology wasn't limited to brute strength. Theseus, the legendary founder of Athens, demonstrated that cunning and moral conviction were equally powerful. His most famous feat was the slaying of the Minotaur, a monstrous half-man, half-bull imprisoned in the twisting labyrinth of Crete. Theseus survived the maze thanks to Ariadne, who gave him a simple but ingenious solution, a ball of thread to retrace his steps. This act symbolized how intelligence and cooperation could triumph over chaos and savagery. In Theseus, the Greeks saw a hero who represented the civilizing force of reason. Then came the saga of Jason and the Argonauts, a tale that highlighted the complexity of heroic quests and leadership. Jason's mission to retrieve the Golden Fleece, a symbol of kingship and rightful rule, brought together a band of elite heroes, the Argonauts, each with their own skills and stories. Their journey across treacherous seas, encounters with fire-breathing bulls, and confrontations with sorcery revealed that heroism was often a communal effort. Central to Jason's success was Medea, a powerful sorceress who used her magic to help him overcome trials. Their relationship, however, also exposed the moral ambiguity of heroism and the cost of ambition, an underlying theme in many Greek myths. The Age of Heroes served as a vital bridge between the immortal realm of the gods and the earthly world of mortals. These demigods, through their epic deeds and personal struggles, carved their place into the mythic landscape, often clashing with gods, monsters, and fate itself. This constant friction between mortal aspiration and divine authority was a recurring motif, echoing the Greeks' own experiences in a world ruled by forces they could not always understand or control. The gods could be merciful or cruel, and the demigods? They stood in the middle, flawed, powerful, and human. Beyond mythology, the stories of these heroes profoundly shaped Greek cultural identity. They influenced everything from art and architecture to literature and philosophy. The virtues of bravery, loyalty, cleverness, and the relentless pursuit of glory were held as societal ideals, while the heroes' tragic flaws served as timeless warnings about pride, hubris, and the consequences of defying the natural order. In the end, the tales of Perseus, Heracles, Theseus, and Jason were not just myths. They were mirrors in which the Greeks saw their own hopes, fears, virtues, and failings reflected. Through them, the demigods became eternal not only in story, but in the very soul of ancient civilization. While the Age of Heroes celebrated the boldness and valor of individual champions, a far more devastating conflict loomed just beyond the horizon, a war that would engulf not only men, but the gods themselves. This was the Trojan War, a cataclysmic struggle that would last for 10 long years and leave an indelible mark on the Greek world. Strangely enough, this legendary war did not begin on the battlefield. Instead, it was sparked by an event that seemed almost trivial, a divine beauty contest. And yet, this small act of vanity would set in motion a chain of destruction that would span a decade and consume some of the greatest heroes of myth. At the heart of the matter was Paris, a Trojan prince, chosen by the gods to judge a contest between three powerful Olympian goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each sought the title of the fairest, and each attempted to sway Paris with lavish promises. Hera offered power and dominion over kingdoms. Athena tempted him with unmatched wisdom and skill in battle. But it was Aphrodite's promise, the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, that ultimately captivated the young prince. That woman was Helen, the queen of Sparta and wife to Menelaus, a powerful Greek king. True to her word, Aphrodite aided Paris in seducing and ultimately abdicating Helen, whisking her away to Troy. What began as a divine wager soon became a human catastrophe. Outraged by this betrayal, Menelaus called upon his brother, Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, to lead a united force of Greek kings and warriors in a campaign to retrieve Helen and punish Troy. Thus began the war, a siege that would stretch across a decade and embroil the most celebrated heroes of Greek legend. The Siege of Troy was unlike any conflict ever recorded in Greek mythology. For 10 years, the Greek coalition encamped outside the towering walls of Troy, locked in a brutal stalemate. Countless lives were lost on both sides. But what truly distinguished this war was the active involvement of the gods themselves, who chose sides and manipulated the fate of mortals as if they were pieces on a cosmic chessboard. The battlefield became a stage not only for warriors, but for the divine. Apollo, in anger, unleashed a plague upon the Greeks. Athena, ever loyal to the Greeks, stood by their side in battle, guiding heroes like Diomedes, who wounded even Ares, the god of war himself. This constant divine interference blurred the line between human will and divine decree, elevating the war to epic proportions. Within this crucible, legendary figures emerged. Achilles, the unmatched warrior of the Greeks, whose rage could alter the tides of battle, became both a weapon and a tragedy unto himself. Hector, Troy's noblest defender, fought not for pride or ambition, but out of love and duty to his city and family. Their eventual duel would become one of the most iconic moments in myth, Achilles' wrath meeting Hector's honor in a battle that symbolized the brutal heart of the war. Despite countless skirmishes and divine interventions, Troy's walls remained unbroken. It was then that Odysseus, king of Ithaca and master of cunning, devised a plan that would live on for millennia, the infamous Trojan horse. The Greeks constructed a massive wooden horse, hollowed out to hide a group of elite soldiers. Pretending to surrender, they left the horse as an offering to Athena and sailed away, hiding their fleet just out of sight. The Trojans, believing the war was over and the gift a sign of peace, brought the horse inside their city. That night, under the cover of darkness, the Greek warriors emerged, opened the gates, and let their army in. Troy was sacked, its walls breached not by brute force, but by deceit and strategy. The fall of Troy marked a devastating end. The city was burned to the ground, its people either killed or enslaved. For the Greeks, it was a hollow victory. Though they had won, the cost was immeasurable. Many of their greatest heroes would never return home. The war's aftermath gave rise to a new generation of myths, chronicling the fates of its surviving heroes, most of them tragic. Odysseus's return journey, delayed by storms, monsters, and angry gods, would take another 10 years and become the epic of the Odyssey. Agamemnon, though victorious, returned only to be murdered by his wife Clytemnestra and her lover, in a tale of betrayal and vengeance. In the end, the Trojan War was not just a clash of armies, it was a confrontation between divine ambition and human will, glory and hubris, destiny and choice. It tested the limits of heroism, revealed the consequences of pride, and reshaped the mythological world forever. From the darkest depths of human tragedy and suffering arose a saga of superhuman strength and unimaginable challenges. This is the story of Heracles, the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, hailed as the greatest of Greek heroes. Renowned for his extraordinary power and countless adventures, Heracles' journey was one marked not only by physical might, but by the harsh realities of divine wrath and mortal endurance. Yet, even the mightiest heroes are not immune to the whims of the gods. Hera, wife of Zeus, bore an intense and bitter hatred for Heracles, a constant reminder of her husband's betrayal. In a cruel act of vengeance, Hera struck Heracles with a madness so profound that he tragically murdered his own children. This unforgivable act weighed heavily upon his soul, a dark stain demanding atonement. Seeking redemption, Heracles turned to the oracle of Delphi, who offered him a faint glimmer of hope. He could cleanse his guilt through a series of 12 daunting labors, assigned by King Eurystheus of Tyrants. These tasks would push the limits of his strength, wit, and endurance, each more impossible than the last. The first labor, the Nemean lion. Heracles' first challenge was to slay the terrifying Nemean lion, a beast with impenetrable golden skin that no weapon could pierce. When his arrows and club proved useless, Heracles relied solely on his immense strength. In a primal display of power, he wrestled the lion in its lair and strangled it to death with his bare hands. This victory was monumental, not only marking the beginning of his trials, but granting him the lion's invulnerable hide, which he fashioned into a cloak and armor, becoming a lasting symbol of his might. The second labor, the Lernaean Hydra. Next, Heracles faced the Lernaean Hydra, a monstrous serpent with multiple heads. Each time he severed one, two would regrow, making brute strength futile. This challenge required cleverness as well as strength. With the help of his nephew Iolaus, Heracles cauterized each next stump, preventing new heads from sprouting. This labor proved that Heracles was not only a force of nature, but a master strategist. The third labor, the Ceryneian hide. For his third task, Heracles had to capture the elusive Ceryneian hide, a swift, golden antlered deer sacred to Artemis. This labor tested his patience and endurance more than his strength. After a relentless year-long pursuit across the Greek countryside, Heracles finally succeeded, demonstrating his unwavering perseverance alongside his physical prowess. The fourth labor, the Erymanthian boar. Heracles' fourth challenge involved capturing the fearsome Erymanthian boar, a monstrous beast terrorizing the region. Using his tactical acumen, Heracles drove the boar into deep snow, where its movement slowed, enabling him to trap it alive. This feat highlighted his ability to outthink as well as overpower nature itself. The fifth labor, cleaning the Augean stables. The fifth labor might have seemed mundane, but was no less daunting. Heracles was tasked with cleaning the Augean stables, which hadn't been cleaned in over 30 years and were buried under unimaginable filth. Instead of tackling the task with brute force, Heracles ingeniously diverted 2 rivers to wash away the stable's filth in a single day. This feat symbolized purification and transformation, showing Heracles' resourcefulness and problem-solving skills. The sixth labor, the Stymphalian birds. Heracles' sixth task involved driving away the Stymphalian birds, creatures with metal beaks and feathers, sacred to Ares, the god of war. Armed with bronze rattles given by Athena, Heracles scared the birds into flight and then shot them down with his bow. This labor underscored the importance of adaptability and divine aid in overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles. The subsequent labors, Heracles' remaining labors, continued to test every aspect of his heroism. He wrestled and captured the Cretan bull, tamed the man-eating mares of Diomedes, and secured the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the fierce Amazons. Each challenge brought unique trials, from raw physical battles to navigating intricate social and political dynamics. The penultimate labors. As Heracles neared the end of his quest, his labors grew even more perilous and far-reaching. He was sent to the ends of the known world to seize the cattle of the monstrous giant Geryon, a fearsome 3-bodied creature. This journey tested not only his combat skills, but his endurance across treacherous terrains and unknown lands. For his 11th labor, Heracles was tasked with retrieving the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by nymphs and a fearsome dragon. This labor demanded both strength and cunning. Heracles tricked the Titan Atlas into fetching the apples while he bore the burden of holding up the sky. This episode highlighted Heracles' cleverness and ability to outwit even the mightiest beings. The final labor, capturing Cerberus. The final and most daunting labor required Heracles to descend into the underworld itself and capture Cerberus, the 3-headed guard dog of Hades. This journey into the realm of the dead tested not only Heracles' physical strength, but his courage in confronting mortality. Through sheer determination and indomitable will, Heracles wrestled Cerberus into submission and brought the beast back to the world of the living. This ultimate victory symbolized Heracles' triumph over death itself, cementing his legacy as a hero beyond mortal limits. These 12 labors did more than cleanse Heracles' soul. They became the very foundation of his legend, illustrating the complex interplay of human strength, divine influence, cunning, and redemption. Through these trials, Heracles transcended his mortal origins to become a symbol of perseverance, ingenuity, and the eternal struggle between fate and fray. Emerging from the shadows of despair wrought by the forgetfulness of the fates, we delve into a story where divine memory and intervention become paramount. This is the tale of Perseus, son of Zeus and Dana, a saga that stands as a powerful testament to the union of divine assistance and mortal ingenuity. Born under extraordinary and miraculous circumstances, Perseus' destiny was intricately bound to prophecy from the very moment of his conception. Zeus, driven by his infinite desire for mortal women, visited Dana in the form of a golden shower, a divine and otherworldly union that set in motion a chain of events destined to alter fate itself. However, King Acrisius, Dana's father, was gripped by fear. A dark prophecy warned him that his own grandson would be the cause of his downfall. Consumed by dread, Acrisius cast mother and child into the unforgiving sea, sealing them in a wooden chest. Yet, the gods will intervene to ensure their survival, and the chest eventually washed ashore on the island of Seriphos, where a humble fisherman named Dictys took them in and raised Perseus as his own. As Perseus grew into a strong and determined young man, the shadow of destiny loomed ever larger. King Polydex, ruler of Seriphos, coveted Dana and sought to remove Perseus, the protective son who stood in his way. In a cunning ploy, Polydex announced his engagement to another woman and demanded extravagant gifts from his subjects. Perseus, eager to prove his valor, boldly promised to deliver any gift the king desired. Seizing the opportunity, Polydex requested the impossible, the head of Medusa, one of the 3 fearsome Gorgon sisters. Medusa's story was one of tragedy and divine punishment. Once a beautiful maiden, she had been transformed into a monstrous figure by the goddess Athena after Poseidon defiled Athena's sacred temple by assaulting Medusa. As retribution, Athena cursed Medusa so that her gaze would turn any living creature to stone, and her hair was twisted into venomous serpents, a terrifying symbol of divine wrath and mortal hubris. Perseus's quest appeared hopeless. How could a mortal possibly confront and defeat a creature whose very glance meant instant death? Yet, Perseus's divine lineage and the gods' favor proved to be his salvation. Recognizing his potential and virtue, the gods stepped in to aid him. Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger god, bestowed upon Perseus a pair of winged sandals that granted him the power of flight. Athena gifted him a polished bronze shield, its reflective surface to be used as a shield against Medusa's petrifying gaze. Armed with these divine tools and his own courage, Perseus set forth on his perilous journey. The challenge was not only one of strength, but also of cleverness and strategy. Upon reaching Medusa's lair, Perseus used the polished shield as a mirror, avoiding direct eye contact with the Gorgon while carefully observing her reflection. This brilliant tactic of indirect confrontation exemplified the resourcefulness attributed to Greek heroes, blending mortal ingenuity with divine aid. In a moment forever immortalized in art and literature, Perseus struck decisively, beheading Medusa while she slept. From the severed neck of the Gorgon sprang forth 2 extraordinary creatures, Pegasus, the majestic winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant wielding a gleaming golden sword. This miraculous birth from death symbolized the eternal cycle of destruction and creation within Greek mythology, reminding us that from great deeds and sacrifices often arise new beginnings and new heroes. Securing Medusa's head in a special sack gifted by the gods, Perseus began his journey home. Yet his adventures were far from complete. Flying over the coast of Ethiopia, he encountered a scene of impending tragedy. Andromeda, daughter of King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia, was chained to a rock, offered as a sacrificial lamb to appease a monstrous sea creature unleashed by the wrathful Poseidon. Without hesitation, Perseus swooped down to rescue the damsel in distress. Using Medusa's head, he turned the fearsome sea monster to stone, saving Andromeda's life. This heroic act not only secured the maiden's freedom, but also won Perseus a bride, as the grateful king offered his daughter's hand in marriage. As we rise from the shadowy depths of the underworld, we find ourselves transported to the lofty, cloud-kissed peaks of Mount Olympus, the sacred home of the immortal Olympian gods. Though divine and immensely powerful, these gods displayed characteristics strikingly akin to those of mortals. Their passionate interactions with one another and with humans gave birth to some of the most captivating and enduring stories in Greek mythology, revealing a pantheon bursting with drama, love, jealousy, rivalry, and conflict. Despite their exalted status, the Olympian gods were far from perfect. They wrestled with complex emotions and intricate relationships, often mirroring the very flaws and desires that define humanity itself. Their jealousies, romances, and grudges frequently triggered ripple effects that profoundly affected mortals, many of whom found themselves helplessly caught in the turbulent crossfire of divine disputes. These celestial beings, with their deeply human foibles, acted as reflective mirrors for ancient Greek society, magnifying the complexities and contradictions of human nature. At the helm of this divine assembly stood Zeus, king of the gods and chief architect of divine drama. His numerous amorous escapades resulted in the birth of countless demigods and heroes, champions who would leave an indelible mark on mythological history. Yet Zeus's infidelities also incurred the fierce wrath of his wife, Hera, queen of the gods. Consumed by jealousy and scorn, Hera often unleashed swift and merciless vengeance upon both Zeus's mortal lovers and their offspring, demonstrating how unchecked jealousy, even among immortals, could wield devastating consequences. Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, was another central figure in the divine dramas that shaped both mortal and immortal worlds. Through her manipulation of love's passions and desires, she sparked intense conflicts and tragic fates. The story of Narcissus, a youth cursed by Aphrodite to fall hopelessly in love with his own reflection, serves as a poignant example. Narcissus wasted away, entranced by his own image, embodying a cautionary tale about the perils of excessive self-love and vanity, one that underscores Aphrodite's profound power over human hearts and minds. The divine twins, Apollo and Artemis, present a fascinating duality in the pantheon's tapestry. On one hand, they were protectors, guardians of their followers, and champions of causes dear to their hearts. Apollo, god of music, poetry, and prophecy, inspired artists, seers, and dreamers alike. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and fierce protector of young women, watched over her charges with unwavering dedication. Yet these deities also wielded sudden and terrible punishments. Their arrows could bring swift death, disease, or misfortune, reminding mortals of the fragile and precarious nature of divine favor. The eternal contrast between wisdom and brute force found perfect embodiment in the dynamic between Athena and Ares. Born fully armed from Zeus's forehead, Athena represented strategic thinking, wisdom, and measured warfare, her calculated approach often placing her at odds with Ares, the god of war, who reveled in the chaos, bloodshed, and raw passion of battle. Their clashing personas symbolized the timeless struggle between reason and impulse, strategy and fury, revealing the multifaceted nature of conflict and warfare in Greek thought. At the crossroads of many mythological tales stood Hephaestus, the divine craftsman, whose unmatched skill in metalworking and artistry set him apart. Despite his extraordinary talents, Hephaestus was often depicted as physically unattractive and lame, a stark contrast to the radiant beauty of his wife, Aphrodite. Their tumultuous marriage, fraught with Aphrodite's infidelities, particularly her affair with Ares, became a rich source of mythic drama, exploring timeless themes of loyalty, betrayal, and the complex nature of love itself. The interactions among the Olympian gods served not just as entertaining stories, but also as profound allegories for natural phenomena and social dynamics. Their conflicts and alliances explain the rhythms of the natural world and human existence. For instance, the changing of the seasons was attributed to the grief of Demeter over her daughter Persephone's annual descent to the underworld. The unpredictable moods of Poseidon explain the capricious and often dangerous nature of the sea, while the powerful thunderbolts of Zeus accounted for storms and lightning that awe and terrify mortals alike. Together, the Olympians wove a tapestry of divine drama and human experience, one that continues to captivate, teach, and inspire, revealing the eternal dance between gods and men. From the depths of the primordial void, the concept of the Greek underworld rose to become one of humanity's most enduring and transformative symbolic systems. Emerging from the chaos of early myth and shaped into a coherent cosmology by the ancient Greeks, then refined by the Romans, this mythological realm echoed powerfully through centuries of thought, literature, and religion. Its transformation from a religious belief into a rich metaphor for psychological and philosophical exploration illustrates mythology's unique ability to evolve while retaining its core resonance. As Christianity spread across the Mediterranean, it encountered entrenched underworld traditions that were not merely discarded, but thoughtfully adapted. Early church fathers did not reject Greek mythological frameworks outright. Instead, they incorporated select elements that aligned with Christian doctrine while reshaping others to fit emerging theological systems. Among these, the geography of Tartarus found a particularly compelling parallel in the evolving concept of hell. The detailed punishments for specific transgressions in the Greek underworld became templates for envisioning eternal divine justice. The torments of Tantalus, forever grasping for unreachable fruit, symbolized the soul's futile yearning for salvation without true repentance. The eternal toil of Sisyphus represented the emptiness of deeds performed without faith. These mythic tales facilitated Christian understandings of divine punishment, moral reckoning, and purification. The gradual development of the concept of purgatory, for instance, borrowed heavily from Greek notions of post-mortem purification, a state between life and death, judgment and redemption. This intermediate space allowed the idea of mercy within judgment to flourish, balancing theological discipline with compassion for human frailty. At the same time, Christian thought preserved more benevolent aspects of the classical afterlife. The Elysian fields, where heroic and virtuous souls found peace, resonated with emerging visions of paradise. The idea of a soul's journey through judgment, trial, and eventual reward echoed Greek narrative patterns and maintained structural links to the earlier mythologies. Even the dramatic episode of Christ's descent into hell to free righteous souls, a theological moment known as the harrowing of hell, mirrored heroic underworld descents from Greek myth, such as those of Orpheus or Heracles. Saint Augustine engaged deeply with classical ideas about the afterlife. Rather than dismiss Platonic notions of soul purification as mere pagan error, he argued that ancient philosophers had caught glimpses of divine truth, fragments of wisdom that found their ultimate fulfillment in Christian revelation. Thus, the Greek underworld was not erased, but reinterpreted as part of a sacred continuity. By the Middle Ages, this fusion of classical and Christian thought gave rise to elaborate depictions of the afterlife. Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy stands as the pinnacle of this synthesis. In his epic, the Roman poet Virgil guides the soul through an underworld that seamlessly combines Greek geography with Christian theology, Roman order with medieval metaphysics. Classical features such as rivers with specific functions, monstrous gatekeepers, and graduated punishments remained, but gained new meaning within a framework centered on salvation, grace, and divine justice. Even Arthurian legends wove underworld motifs into their spiritual fabric. The knight's quest for sacred relics, mirroring Greek descents into Hades, became internal spiritual journeys, trials of the soul. These narratives followed a recognizable structure: descent, ordeal, transformation, and return. The purpose, however, was no longer mere survival or rescue. It was spiritual enlightenment, in line with Christian ideals of chivalry and redemption. Visual art, too, embraced this synthesis. Illuminated manuscripts from the medieval period depicted hell in stunning architectural detail, often surpassing classical representations in complexity and symbolism. Painters like Hieronymus Bosch combined mythological creatures with Christian themes of torment and redemption, creating terrifying yet didactic imagery that visually articulated spiritual teaching. Mystery plays, performed across medieval Europe, brought these underworld journeys to life for common audiences. These theatrical productions blended biblical figures with classical personae in richly symbolic settings drawn from both traditions, bridging the gap between abstract theology and tangible storytelling. The Renaissance reignited interest in classical antiquity, enabling a more nuanced engagement with Greek underworld myths. Humanist scholars recovered original Greek texts that had long been filtered through medieval interpretation. Artists like Michelangelo reimagined mythological symbols within Christian contexts. His Last Judgment, for instance, features Charon ferrying souls across the river Akron, a vivid example of classical imagery used to enrich Christian themes. This period also marked a shift from external to internal interpretations. Writers and philosophers began to understand the underworld not just as a place of the dead, but as a symbolic landscape of the mind. Shakespeare's ghosts, existing in liminal spaces between revenge and rest, drew from both classical and Christian underworld traditions. Marlowe's Dr. Faustus dramatized conflict between Greco-Roman demons and Christian damnation, creating tension between competing worldviews of sin and justice. Such explorations laid the groundwork for a deeper psychological understanding of myth. The underworld, once a destination after death, became a metaphor for internal darkness. The dark night of the soul, the descent into madness, or the journey towards self-awareness, all were framed using imagery refined through centuries of mythological evolution. During the Romantic era, this symbolic use of the underworld deepened further. Alchemical texts reference death and rebirth using metaphors rooted in the Greek underworld: dissolution, putrefaction, and transformation. Occult scholars like John Dee attempted to recreate ancient necromantic practices, blending classical ritual with Christian mysticism. Meanwhile, poets and artists viewed the descent into the underworld as a metaphor for creative struggle. Orpheus's doomed attempt to rescue Eurydice became a symbol of artistic ambition, trying to retrieve beauty from the darkness, always at risk of losing it through premature revelation. Goethe's Faust reimagined the underworld as a psychological space, foreshadowing the development of modern depth psychology. The journey inward, the confrontation with one's shadow self, echoed the ancient structure of descent, ordeal, and transformation, now understood in terms of the psyche rather than the soul. Gothic literature thrived on underworld motifs. Haunted ruins dedicated to Hecate, catacombs whispering with the voices of the dead, or still waters reflecting lost souls, all became vehicles for exploring the boundaries of reason and emotion. William Blake explicitly internalized the underworld. For him, its figures were not external gods, but archetypal forces within every soul, dramatizing the struggle between light and darkness. This inward shift reflected a broader cultural realization that the underworld was not just a place beneath, but a metaphor for the uncharted regions of human consciousness. Thinkers like Carl Jung later confirmed this view, interpreting mythological symbols as expressions of the collective unconscious. The hero's descent into the underworld became a blueprint for individuation, the process by which one integrates hidden aspects of the self into a unified whole. In modern popular culture, Greek underworld motifs remain pervasive. From video games to films and television series, the underworld journey continues to resonate. Role-playing games, in particular, allow players to descend into shadowy realms, confront archetypal guardians, and emerge transformed, fulfilling psychological needs once addressed by ancient rituals. Contemporary literature draws from this reservoir of meaning with renewed sophistication. Writers like Milan Kundera, Toni Morrison, and Haruki Murakami explore memory, trauma, and identity through symbolic descents into darkness. These underworld journeys are less about death and more about transformation, mirroring myth while addressing modern existential concerns. In visual arts, classical imagery is reimagined for the present day. Installations might pair Cerberus with surveillance drones or cast Hades in digital form, showing how ancient guardianship now intersects with modern anxiety. These works assume audiences recognize mythological references, using them to question contemporary values and fears. Music, too, continues this legacy. Concept albums by rock bands explore Orphic descent. Hip-hop artists invoke Tartarus to speak of systemic oppression. The underworld remains a potent metaphor for creativity, resistance, and self-revelation. In tracing its path from ancient cosmology to modern metaphor, the Greek underworld reveals its true power, not as a relic of outdated belief, but as a mirror held up to the evolving human psyche. It maps the fears, hopes, and transformations that define the human condition. Its mythology, rooted in death, ultimately speaks to life. What began as a vision of the end has become a guide for endless beginnings. The realm once imagined as the land of no return now illuminates the most intimate aspects of existence: memory, guilt, transformation, creativity, and truth. Thus, the underworld's long journey, from sacred space to symbolic landscape, reflects our own. It teaches us that by facing the darkness within, we find the light to move forward. In this way, the myth endures, not as fading echo, but as living insight. The realm below becomes the wisdom within. The kingdom of shadows becomes the foundation of clarity. And death's ancient domain becomes, again and again, a path toward understanding how to live.